Good afternoon. Today, Alex and I are going to present to you how depression and social media affect beauty. We've prepared a blog and slideshow presentation to show you what we have learned throughout the course. This course has helped us grow and gain a better understanding of what beauty is. We will share with you the biggest and most impactful pieces of information that we've brought into our final paper. The points I'm going to talk about and cover are some of the most important ones. What is depression? Beauty standards and fighting depression. Later on, I will explain to you why I chose this topic and how it has impacted my everyday life. So to begin, what is depression? It is defined as a feeling of severe dejection. Well, what does that mean, you might be asking? And all the things you feel and you see are meaningless. Someone with depression often feels that nothing matters. Nobody cares, and they feel that the walls around them are quote-unquote caving in. Why is this important with beauty? If you find no worth or no point in something, the chances are that you'll find it something not beautiful. Oftentimes, beauty is set by standards of what we have to look like or what we should look like. This is definitely viewed these days with social media, which is why I'm so glad I got partnered with Alex, because Alex's paper was the effects of social media on beauty. I was talking with some teammates early on in the basketball season, and we all came to an agreement that there is no quote-unquote good enough standard. You're either too tall or you're too short. You're too pretty or you're not pretty enough. There's nothing in the middle that you can live up to. The last thing I'm going to talk about is fighting depression. It's hard to go through depression alone, so to have a good support system is definitely needed. And all the impacts of depression are negative, so Alex is going to share. But first, I'm going to give you a quote, and it said, "There are studies that look to find how beauty affects self-image, and then it leads to such disorders that drive a person to a very dark place."
Okay, so I'm going to ask for some participation first, so ignore the first bullet point. But what emotions do you guys experience when you hear the word beauty and social media, more specifically like on Instagram and Facebook?
Happiness.
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
Kind of with Dylan, just happy a little bit. Depends on like what you're viewing though.
I think the first thing I would think would be like relaxing.
Ooh, yeah, it's like just like nature.
Through a lot of people and seeing happy things in their world.
That's actually surprising because I think of something completely different. I think of when I think of like social media, I think of like celebrities posting pictures about themselves, and I sort of, in it, depending on the picture, I sometimes feel like a little jealous because they're beautiful, and sometimes like we aspire to be a specific person that we see on social media all the time, and we will go to great measures to meet the goal of trying to become that person. So I'm going to sort of incorporate what I learned beauty in teens and young adults and beauty in older adults like all together, because this is sort of my like personal reflection of those points. So I'm going to start with beauty in teens and young adult and social media. So teens and young adults are, for the most part, negatively impacted by social media. They're harmed mentally and physically because of all the images that they decide to look up and who they want to try to be like. But all these women and people we see are normally like photoshopped in some way, so like it's not a really realistic image, so their self-esteem is being lowered for really no reason. I saw a study and from the National Eating Disorder Association who interviewed a whole bunch of teens and who gave some like speeches or like interviews. And this one girl that was interviewed named Jen gave an example of She said, this is in the first person, "I know a 10-year-old girl who stopped eating after reading comments online that people had made about a picture of a teen star, Demi Lovato. Things like comments or tweets may seem simple, but they can really impact girls in a negative way by causing them to have an unrealistic expectation about what thin is. I've seen that and experienced that." So I know a lot of like celebrities always say be yourself, and they want to try to like impact you in some way, and I think for like the most part they're sort of giving them the wrong message, because when people see how thin all of these celebrities are, they want to become thinner, so sometimes they get eating disorders because of that, because they want to try to lose weight to become the perfect person. Older women are impacted mostly by the younger adults and teens, because they're not very tech savvy, and when they see their children and grandchildren changing, it makes them want to change too. And I also read something that older women don't feel necessarily represented by the stuff they see online, and because they also realize that there's more things that are important than trying to be trendy and meeting the standards of today.
So I'm going to share with you why I chose this topic. So this is kind of more on a personal level. Someone in my family that was very close to me came to me recently and told me that for a long time they've been struggling with depression. So I didn't really know what that meant on a complete and honest level. I really didn't know what that meant. So I took the time to do some research, and that's kind of how I came up with my paper topic. I realized how severe it actually is, and that's when I could see why the person was acting the way they were, and how not only their life but my life was impacted by depression. So when I sat down with Miss Neatfield and had a conversation about how I didn't know where I wanted to go with this paper, and then a couple of days later that family member sat down with me and said, listen, I've been struggling with this, and it gave me a whole new view on how the things that you might not find beautiful really are, and how we take for granted just the simple feelings that we get from looking at something beautiful.
As Abby was talking, I realized that I had 3 quotes that I wanted to share with you that I didn't share with you before, so I'm going to do that really fast. So, part of my academic argument had some statistics in it, and this first quote had some, like how it shows how much teens have used social media throughout their days and life. So Facebook and YouTube dominate this social media landscape as notable majorities of U.S. adults' use of each of these. Some 78% of 18 to 24-year-olds use Snapchat. Similarly, 71% of Americans in this age group now use Instagram, and close to half, 45%, are Twitter users. This next quote is the part that I found from a website that was more targeted for older women and how they thought of beauty, and I already sort of mentioned part of this. 61% of women claim they don't feel represented by images of women in media. About 3/4 of them relish advertisements that celebrate all ages and wish they saw more realistic images of women in magazines and social media feeds. And to close, I found this Bible verse, and it's 1 Samuel 16:7, which says, "But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart." So in reality, it doesn't matter what you look like on the outside, because God will only judge what your heart looks like and what's on the inside. I also chose my topic of social media and beauty because I I know a lot of people who have struggles with self-image, and I knew I wanted to do something with people and beauty. And when I sat down with Ms. Neatfeld, that sort of just like came in my mind randomly, and she helped me sort of tighten it up some, because at first it was just like media, so that could have been taken to like advertising and stuff like that. And so that's why I chose this topic.
Does anyone have any questions?
I do. I want you guys to talk to me just a little bit about writing process and what you guys learned about the writing process through doing this. And I also want to make sure we get to see your blog.
Okay.
Sound good?
I'll talk about my writing process. I definitely learned that I want to spend more time on both my annotated bibliography and my rough draft, because writing my final draft, it was sort of harder. And on top of that, I wish I had gotten more people to peer review my rough draft as well. So yeah, those are the 3 main things that I would want to change, because I sort of did it last minute, and I was sort of just like, I just need to find resources to cite, and so I sort of wish I spent more time on that aspect.
So I spent a lot of time on the research process, but I didn't spend a lot of time putting my rough draft together. So when it came time for me to write my final paper, my ideas were, let's just say, completely a mess. I had ideas from my original, and then where I then came up with my actual topic, and it just didn't flow well. So I would say definitely making sure that you spend time on your rough draft and your final draft to make sure that they're what you want for your course. And
One other question for you guys before you each pick a little section to share from your blog. But for how would you define what is writing and critical inquiry? One of you can take each word if you want and kind of talk about that, or what do you think it means, that key critical inquiry? What is that?
I guess I would say it's like just breaking down like a topic and really diving into it and getting to know it and understand it and pull it apart piece by piece.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. And also, like, applying it to everyday life.
Very cool. Have you guys seen any application from the things that you've learned, whether it be about writing skills? Have you found that there's been another class where you've been able to use some of this information about research and writing and thinking? Or have you seen specifically about our theme of beauty that has struck you as you've been in your daily life?
I would say kind of like how I shared with my basketball team. Just like being able to have a conversation like that, I probably wouldn't have had so much like information if I hadn't taken the course.
I asked a couple of people from my church actually about what they thought beauty was when I was writing my academic argument, because I wanted some other views on it, and I thought that like that was cool that like I had one like type of view and then some other people had completely different, and it was interesting that so I could compare and contrast like our views on beauty.
Do you want me to share first?
Yeah.
Okay. So, like I said, I also mentioned all of the steps to the writing process. So, in here I mentioned that you need a thesis statement, which is very important when writing your paper, and how the annotated bibliography and the rough draft are very important when it comes to the final paper, because you have your sources all together in your paper and you just make little edits and just make it a lot easier at the end.
That's sort of just random. My growth throughout the course. So after like the first couple of classes that we had our like class discussions and stuff, I felt a lot of my like worldviews changing because of the different aspects of beauty that we went through throughout the course. And on like road trips, for an example, I would look out the window and just, you know, space out. But now when I go on road trips, I'm gonna take into consideration like how like the landscape came to be, and like notice all the details that I see as I drive by. Yeah.
Nice. Do you guys have any other quick questions for them about their topics? All right, one last time I want to hear your academic argument, what each of you argued and not what each of you guys researched.
So I argued that social media has more of a negative impact on women, like young women, than it does on older women.
Did you find quite a bit of research on both sides, or were you finding that your
Surprisingly,
research
yes.
was really lining up with what you were saying?
Surprisingly, yes, I did.
Okay, very nice.
It was
On both
more-
sides?
It was more like easier to find stuff on like young adult
Okay,
and teens more than older.
very nice.
My final paper, my argument was that depression has a negative impact on beauty.
All right, let's give both these girls a round of applause.